This is Macro Analytics, delivering frank conversations on global macroeconomics and market analysis, outside the mainstream, featuring discussions and debates between Gordon T. Long, publisher and editor of GordonTLong.com, and his guests. The content of this discussion is strictly the opinion of the participants. It is in no way a solicitation for business, nor is it to be considered investment advice of any sort. Always consult a registered investment advisor before making any investment decision. These discussions are extremely hard-hitting and terribly frank, and parental discretion is advised. Now, on to the show.
Good morning. I'm Gord Long with GordonTLong.com, and I have with me again this morning John Rubino, well-known author and publisher of the website dollarcollapse.com. And John, welcome back.
Hi, Gord.
John, I mentioned when we closed the last show that we were going to pick up with some of the things that you've noticed on your vacation travels. And I have up one of the articles we're going to talk about here this morning, depending on time, but an article that was specifically on that trip. Want to give us some background on it?
Yeah, I took a long trip just recently. It was partially work and partially, to visit some friends that I haven't seen for a really long time. And I came back terrified. And these were people who were very, very successful back in the day, 20 years ago, give or take. And almost all of them had fallen on hard times one way or another. Either they'd lost a job and didn't recover from it, or they'd made some bad decisions that set them way back. And so in every case, they were having financial troubles or career troubles or general life troubles. And in each case, there was one consistent characteristic of what had happened to them, and it was that the economy didn't let them recover from their mistakes. 20 or 30 years ago, you could lose a job and instantly find another one that was similar. You could start your own company, and if that failed, the big companies in your field would hire you pretty quickly. And so a mistake wasn't deadly. But lately, that has changed. These guys, all of them, haven't been able to recover from what happened to them when they lost one job. It's been years and they're not back in their field yet, and they're running through their savings, and their kids are getting into college now, and it's $40,000 a year, and they have no idea how they're going to come up with it, and they're losing houses and cars and moving further and further down the economic ladder instead of moving up. These were all people who expected to live the life of the 10%, to be reasonably wealthy by now, and to be looking at a nice retirement, and to have their kids all taken care of, in good colleges and graduating with great jobs. And none of that is happening. So I came back from this trip petrified and, sat down with my wife and said, we need to cut massive amounts out of our monthly spending, because, this world isn't like the world we grew up with, and the conclusion that you have to come to is that this is what the early stage of a depression looks like. It's not some gigantic financial explosion where everything changes from one day to the next. It's this grinding, lowering of expectations as people find out that things aren't as easy as they thought, and that the world doesn't forgive even a single mistake, and that what you took for granted as an upper middle class life is now lower middle class, where you don't have the nice house, you don't have the great car, your kids are living with you at the age of 28 and with very few good job prospects, and suddenly you're not going to retire. You're going to work until you drop, because there just aren't the resources available to let you retire. And that's terrifying. And I'm sure that this kind of life is being spread across the country now, that it wasn't just my friends. It's probably happening to a lot of other people who've started at various places in their economic lives, and find out that they're headed downward instead of upward, and there really isn't any end to the process.
No question. I saw, John, the same thing on my vacation, little different scenario. I'm a sailor, and then I took the boat out, and we were out to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, and specifically Martha's Vineyard. I mean, this is a very moneyed crowd out there, and well-to-do people, and the boats are quite large, etc. But the endless discussions that I was in, to me, signaled that we are in a depression, and people that I would call minimally in the upper middle class, the kinds of problems that they're facing. And I won't bore you with all sorts of the stories, but I thought one was really telling. I had lunch with a family that I've known for a long time. We met out there. They brought their boat in too, and I've watched their kids grow up. And this is the father of the family is an Ivy League engineering graduate, done all the right kind of things, lived very prudently during his life, saved his money, invested well. So should be living the life of leisure. And he's probably 64 now. Should be retired quite some time ago, but no, is still working it out because he gets into the costs and the issues that he's faced with pensions and lost pensions and companies he's had to move between over the years that have just created some kinds of stress earlier. But the problem that was really enlightening to me is he has two children, and the younger one is now going off to college, and the younger one, the older one already through, but the younger one, and he was stunned to find out this year he's going to what he calls a Tier 2 engineering school, going to cost him $52,000 a year, and he's looking at 6 years ahead of him to pay for this particular son to get through school. So he had not budgeted for that in any way. But what was the bigger problem was that his older daughter, who had went and studied in Manhattan and in very good, very prestigious school, all of the costs associated with that he'd footed the bill. But she's been unable to get any kind of work and has went from one internship to the other, building some kind of resume. So he's had to foot all the bills for that. Now she's 26 years old, and now he's facing medical because she can't be covered under his medical plans. There's monies that's rolling out in that. So just tremendous stress. So I'm listening to the family talking about, and the reason I'm mentioning this story, because what I've just described is not uncommon. But what was really interesting is I asked her in the conversation what the job prospects were. And she's now got something that's steady. I won't name the company that she's working with, but everybody would recognize, world class, in New York, and she's working in their advertising department. When I say working, she's working as an intern. No money, no payments, just trying to get more experiences. And as I said, probably her fifth internship job. So I said, what are the chances of getting work there? She says, slim to none. And I says, they have a big turnover. She says, well, they've got 62 people in the department. And she says, you want to take a guess at how many of these people are full-time regular employees of the company? And I took my wild guess, and obviously I'm totally out of touch. And she said to me, 4. 4 of them actually work for the company. I said, pardon? I'm missing something here. She says 2/3 of the rest are in fact contractors. So they're there. They come in every single day. They work at a desk. They have their assignments, but they're paid as a contractor. No benefits, etc. And if the jobs aren't there, there's no contract that week or the next week or the week after. The other third are like me. They're interns at absolutely no pay. And I was just sitting there thinking there's got to be something wrong with our labor laws. And I says, is this unique? She says, no, all my friends are in this position. She says, so it's not a matter of whether I'm going to go find something else. I don't know if there is anything else. She says, and Gord, she says, I'm late. I want to get married. I want to have a family, but there's no way I can possibly ever have what my parents had because I'm going to be later in life. I'm never sure I'll ever afford a house because I can't even get a job at this stage. And the frustration and the disappointment that I could see in her eyes, I've seen so many times with others over the last couple of years. But I think, John, the message is what's going on in the corporate life is really camouflaged here. The shifts that they're making to cut costs, which is pushing our profits up, is clearly getting hit. I don't know if you've seen anything like that, but it was actually stunning to me.
Well, it does sound like it's pretty consistent across the economy now. Everybody is finding that they have to cut costs. And they're finding out that there's, in Marxist economics, they used to talk about the reserve army of the unemployed, which is a good thing for the corporate class because they can bring people in for next to nothing. And we've created something like that in the white collar world now. It's not factory workers anymore that are that are massed outside the factory willing to work for next to nothing. It's people with really good educations who expected to make serious money and to have a wide range of job opportunities who basically have nothing now. Who are like the daughter of your friend, who are working for either nothing or next to nothing, and who really don't see any prospect of that improving anytime soon.
80% of the people working in retail have a college education.
Yeah.
And I could go through from waitresses on down, but you say, okay. And then I read that JCPenney are going to get rid of all of their checkout people. So it just goes without saying. So these are college people working at below what is any kind of standard of life, and also not being able to are getting laid off, are getting cut back.
Yeah. And so the life that these guys took for granted is gone now. They are now, even though they don't feel like it, they're well-educated people and they expect to live a certain life and their family lives a certain life, but that's not what they've got going forward. If they have to carry their own weight in the world and aren't taken care of by their folks, then they're lower middle class. These are people who can afford maybe an apartment and a junky car and no health insurance or really crappy health insurance, and that's it. And on the other hand, if their parents take care of them, then the parents are dragged down by the fact that they've got this big family to maintain at a time in life when they thought it would just be, the two of them off on a yacht somewhere, or enjoying vacation with their RV driving around the country. And it's not like that anymore. Now, if you've got kids in college and you're having to pay for health insurance for your whole family, you're talking about potentially $60,000 or $70,000 a year, where you just have to write the check at the beginning of each year. And if you don't make dramatically more than that, then that eats up all your disposable income. And so you're just surviving. And so many people out there didn't expect to end up this way, but the economy just doesn't have what it used to have in terms of great new jobs everywhere and easy credits. And so, yeah, we're heading into a time when this is the new normal. And the thing is, it's not publicly understood yet. It's still a silent depression. And the interesting question now is, when does it become non-silent? When does it become front page news that this is happening to people across the economic spectrum, and everyone realize that it's not just them, it's everyone, and we start to lose hope. The psychological effects on the stock market and the job market and the rest of our lives is going to be dramatic when it becomes public knowledge.
You just summarized, John, exactly what my experience with the people I was talking to on vacation, what they're facing. And so then they're writing those checks, as you mentioned, for education, for health coverage for their children, for apartments. But what's happening is a couple things. One, the capital that they thought they were going to be able to retire on is not earning anything. And they can't see it earning anything, 1-2%. It's just not enough for their carrying costs. A lot of them owned their own businesses, so they don't have a pension other than self-funded, and the capital's not enough. And then they've got this burden of these costs that they didn't see coming, and mentioning associated with the kids. So it's killing them. But I think it's becoming more visible. I have up here right now, the Wall Street Journal just did a major article, and they said it's the upper middle income. I mean, we've talked about this before. The middle class in America is being completely gutted. But now, here is a feature talking about the upper middle income families and the pressure that's on it. So to answer your question there, I think that we're now at that stage. It's now becoming more and more visible. Certainly it's the number one conversation I find myself in, unsolicited, by the way. Because people know that I'm in the money business. And they're asking me as though I have I'm the oracle, that I have some kind of quick answer, and I can tell them straight out there is no quick answer in this particular situation, other than protect your capital, protect your paper from the erosion, protect your purchasing power is what I meant to say.
But the thing is, you can't protect your net worth if it's not earning anything and your expenses exceed your income. which is where a lot of these people find themselves now. So they're actually having to eat into savings in order to cover college costs and their own living expenses and healthcare and other things. And so they're regressing. They're falling behind when they should, if you're in your 50s or early 60s, this should be your prime savings time. You should be earning the most you'll ever earn in your life and socking away a lot of that. And if instead you're eating into your savings in order to just pay for life, you reach a point where you see that there's no solution to this. There's no time in the future when it turns around because you're getting older. You're going to leave your high earning years in the very near future, and your expenses aren't going to go down that much. And so your prospect is to eat into your savings year after year after year, until there's nothing left. And that must be a horrible thing to contemplate for someone who's basically done everything right for 4 or 5 decades. But that's where a lot of people are.
That was the most troubling part in your article and what I saw. These are people that I'm referring to, and you are, were winners, are winners.
Yeah.
But the system now has put them into a track where they can't win. It's fighting against it. And as bad as that is, and which is bad, the kids today, the youth, have got it even worse. And it's almost like they feel hopeless. They just don't see the opportunities out there. And so, John, What happens is, for example, they're going to enter the household formations are becoming fewer and fewer. And it takes, in the housing market, it's not going to come back until there's people buying starter homes. They're just not buying starter homes at the cheapest mortgage we've ever had in history. They're renting because they don't have it. And so if we think housing's coming back, somebody's got to be buying those initial homes, and it's not there. They're moving back home, matter of fact. They're moving back to live with their parents.
Yeah. Well, if you have $50,000 of student debt and a minimum wage job, nobody's going to give you a mortgage. You can't buy a house. And so, yeah, you're right that the whole lower rung of the housing market is being cannibalized by college, by student loans. And that's something that people don't quite get yet, that we're substituting one kind of debt for another, and it's going to vaporize the housing market at the bottom. But Gordon, we should talk about, while we have time, why this is happening. This isn't an act of God or some kind of natural disaster. It's the result of easy money for the past few decades. When you make interest rates artificially low, as we have done at least since the beginning of Alan Greenspan's reign at the Fed, you distort people's decision making because you cause asset prices to go up a little faster than they would otherwise and make credit a little easier than it would otherwise be. And so people make decisions based on extrapolating that into the future. We think, oh, well, our stocks will always go up 10% a year and we'll always be able to borrow money. So what the heck? I'll quit my job and do this startup company because the market is always going to be so favorable. I'll make a fortune, and then the startup doesn't work. And we reach a point where so much money has been borrowed already that credit dries up and asset prices go back to their long-term growth path, which is much lower than the easy money growth path. And we find out that we can't get a new job when our startup fails. And all of a sudden our life is way harder than it would have been had the easy money environment continued. And so what we have right now is a whole economy with this kind of malinvestment everywhere. People have made bad decisions based on extrapolating an easy money world into the indefinite future. And that was wrong because easy money is really a temporary thing. It can't go on for forever because you accumulate too much debt and then the debt has to be worked off. And now we're in the debt working off stage of the process, and all these people are left high and dry by decisions that they made that were distorted by bad government policy. So it's not that these guys who made the decisions that have come back to bite them were stupid. They're actually very smart people, but they were fooled by an environment that was consciously created by the government to cause people to borrow more money in order to pay more taxes in the short run, in order to make the budget deficit look better, and in order to get more incumbents reelected. So, historians are going to be very hard on the people who have been in charge in the U.S. in the past 20 years, with good reason.
I've written a number of papers, and I have a chart up here right now, John, and it really is, I call it monetary malpractice that we've had, and it's deceptions, distortions, and delusions. It's led to mispricing and malinvestment overall, which is classic Austrian, as you well know. Mm-hmm. But and I've mapped it out, not here, but I've mapped out the issues associated with moral hazard, unintended consequences, and why they have really left us with completely dysfunctional markets overall. I mean, this is not rocket science. It's pretty straightforward. The question that really is begged is, how did we ever get on such a mistaken road path? And that in itself is a long discussion, and we've had discussion previously of the road of the pathway and roadmap that we're currently on, as we're going to more and more centralized control, crony capitalism, which we believe, and you and I both, I think, share this, is leading to, I'll use the word statism, but such a lot more control as we give up more and more of our freedoms to keep this system working. If you can call it working.
Yeah. Well, that's, a subject for a long, long conversation another time, I guess, because fiat currency is the root of so many of the problems we have right now. And people still don't completely get the difference between make-believe currency like today's dollar and real money, like gold under the gold standard of, prior to World War I. And I think we have to educate ourselves on monetary matters before we can make wise decisions going forward. And, hopefully that's going to be part of the discussion, at the bottom when everything falls apart, and we have to figure out how it happened. And hopefully the voices calling for limited government and sound money will be heard by enough people that we become once again a well-educated electorate.
I'm a big believer that we keep growing, and I think the future is incredibly bright. But I think that there's a very tough 10 years in front of us, John, as we have to rethink some of these public policies, whether fiscal and monetary, that have taken us. And you're absolutely right. The bottom line of it is a faulty fiat currency, since we've abandoned the Bretton Woods, effectively the gold standard. I'm not trying to advocate a gold standard. I'm trying to advocate that you need some restrictions on just simply easy money. And then politicians, they're incapable of limiting themselves when the cookie jar is open. And that's one of the one of the flaws in democracy. And the solution is we the people. We the people have to understand in great detail what's going on. And I'm encouraged that we even have political debate now about auditing the Fed, and Paul Ryan's jumping out and saying he won't extend Bernanke's term if in fact they're elected. So these are kinds of discussions we would have never heard a few years ago. So there's more and more focus on it.
Agreed.
We're out of time as usual, John, and we just always seem to get going and up against our hard line. Any last comments you want to make?
I know we've covered it pretty well, Gordon. I think this should do it.
We didn't get to the rest of your articles. We'll pick those up on another day. Looking forward to having you back, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
This has been Gordon T. Long, editor and publisher of GordonTLong.com. New recordings are posted regularly and can be found at GordonTLong.com. New show notifications are available through RSS feed, iTunes, and other social networking venues at GordonTLong.com.